Okay, welcome everyone to our Brynka Beacon for the month. This is our presentation on lockers in your future, what you need to know. So now we're going to go through a few introductory slides here. I'm Jennifer Young, your host of the Brynka Beacon today. And this is a free webinar that we run a couple times a quarter. And the idea is that we're providing a forum for sharing ideas. So we invite you to listen, learn, and participate. Feel free to ask questions at any point in the presentation. Open up the chat box, which if you're not familiar with Zoom is at the bottom of your toolbar of the presentation. You can type any questions at any point in time into the chat, and our guest speakers will be more than happy to answer those for you. So today we have the Brynka team running this presentation here. So you'll be hearing from Brenda Fick, our president and speaker, Mark Fenning, who is also one of our speakers, and he had the opportunity to purchase lockers himself for a school that he worked for in the past. And same thing with Peggy Smith. She is one of our speakers today, and we're going to get some insight on questions that they looked to ask different vendors when they were in the process of looking to purchase lockers. So a lot of our presentation is going to be based on what questions you really want to ask when you're looking for this type of technology. So we hope that you find this really helpful. And again, I'm Jennifer Young, your host of the Brynka Beacon. And we also have Joe Martinez, Vice President of Brynka, behind the scenes running the show for us. So thanks, Joe, and welcome everyone. Thank you for participating today. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll pass the presentation over to our first speaker, Brenda Fick. So what are we going to look for, Brenda?
Good question, Jen. Actually, when we were talking about a presentation, I wanted to do a presentation on lockers because when I started working with different locker companies, there were very few, and now there are many more. It is vastly used in not just with students, with faculty, and in all kinds of departments, because truly a locker system, and we're talking about a smart locker system, an intelligent system, not anything where you have to push buttons or have combo locks, or this is a smart, intelligent locker system. And there are many, many aspects to look at when you are looking for a locker system. Joe, can you go to the next slide? So the first thing is, how long have they been providing lockers? And the interesting part of this is there are some locker companies out there that have done non-intelligent lockers for a very, very, very long time. And now they are just getting into doing smart lockers or intelligent lockers. So if you do not have someone that has been in this industry for a while, they may not have figured out everything that needs to be done with a smart locker technology, both on the front end and the back end, because software is always provided in some way, shape, or form. So you not only have the hardware, but you have the software to go along with it. So you need to look at both. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the lockers. Joe, can you do the next slide? So does it matter where they originate from? Now, there are lockers out there that actually say they originate from USA, but in looking at all of them out there, there are some that actually get the doors and the actual locker from China or someplace else, but then they put the doors and the locks on in the United States, so they're USA built lockers. So you really need to dig deep and find out where they are manufacturing that locker system. And if you don't care where it comes from, then that's no problem. The only thing to think about is if for some reason we have some kind of supply chain that happened this year and a lot through COVID, are you going to be able to get the parts and the, whatever you need to have them functioning? Are you going to be able to get that, whatever parts you need quickly? So if they're from the United States or from country, you need to investigate that. The next is steel or laminate. And I dealt with laminate when I first started with smart lockers, and I kind of went over to steel only because steel does seem to last longer. But if you are in an area where you don't have humidity, you don't have any kind of worry as far as the lockers not performing over time, then laminate is fine. I find out I did have a customer that chose laminate, and 5 years later, because they were in an area or a situation where some humidity, their air conditioner broke, and that humidity and that heat, they had to replace all of their laminate. So again, it's another thing that you just need to look at. Do you want steel or do you want laminate? And sometimes they put a little bit of steel with laminate as well. So when they say they're steel. So again, look at that steel. And Joe, if you go to the next slide, there is something else, and that's the gauge of steel. So the gauge of steel is very, very important as well. So again, the lower the number, that gauge is going to be a solid steel door. The smaller the gauge, it's going to be one that's going to move around and not be as sturdy. So again, ask that question. Next slide, Joe. Then you have what you're going to put in that locker system. And do they have an indoor, an outdoor? Do they have front loading? Do they have rear loading? Do they have refrigerated? So there are a lot of aspects to a locker system now that they didn't have 7 or 8 years ago. So, and they continually change and update. So the other thing, just especially with lockers, understand what they're looking at providing for the future. What are they going to do? Are they looking at, something that you may need for the future, or are they just stuck in this one area and they're not really doing anything more with the locker system? Go ahead to the next slide. The next comes the software side. So on the software side, there is 2 aspects. One is it in the cloud? Does the information go in the cloud? And then the next is IT. So when you're talking about the cloud, the one advantage for that is that there's going to be less IT resources needed. If you go to the next slide, Joe, less IT. If you go with a client server, literally, you're going to need more IT. And the reason for that is that anytime you do updates, anytime you do changes, if it's on your server in-house, you are going to have to go through your IT to get any of that working. So a lot of choices with the software. And to add to that, I'm going to ask Peggy to continue with other information regarding software. Peggy, you want to take over?
Certainly, happy to. Yes, so the unique situation, the opportunity that I have been in, that I've worked at a university where we had to look at various lockers to put at the university. And so learned a lot through that process throughout the years and adding them and what a great benefit that they were. But what I want to just try to point out, as Brenda has already, some of the other things that you need to consider when you are looking at lockers, such as the software. Will the software allow you to create a branded kiosk, meaning the lockers have a like a small computer, a window that is attached, a kiosk that will allow you to brand it with your logo, some sort of a message or mascot or anything that you want, so that when your students or customers, people that you service walk up, will see your brand. So that is something that you want to consider, sir, when they come by and pick up a package or they pick up mail, that you can customize the screen and add a logo. Next slide, please. So then also not only being able to brand the kiosk, but also the email notification that goes to your customers, to the student. You can put your logo, you can put a special message, you can put your hours as we often did, and those hours change throughout the year as well. Certainly, perhaps some of you are in move-in process right now, and I remember that so vividly and how busy those times were. So early on, these are the hours, the lockers you can access 24 hours. And then when things started to settle down, you know, we reduced our hours. So you want to be able to customize the email going to the customers as to they have a package or they have mail in the locker and what those hours are. Next slide, please. And also, there's various locker business partners out there. Does the software allow you to combine packages and mail throughout the day? Does it only allow you to put packages and or mail in once a day? Does it allow you to put another package in a locker? Let's say a student already received a package early in the morning and they haven't picked it up yet, and you now received another one. Will the software notify you that that person already has mail or package in that locker? And if they do, it will ask you if you want to add another package or mail. That's really important. That's going to allow you to utilize those lockers more and more throughout the day, turning those lockers over and over to add to the usage of that in your workflow. Next, please. Again, with regard to the workflow, the lockers that you are considering, another question to ask, will it allow, does the software allow other carriers to input packages and mail directly into the locker and not just your own staff, such as FedEx? Does the business partner allow you, do they work with that carrier so that if they're delivering to the campus now, are they delivering to the dorms? Well, perhaps you want FedEx and UPS to be able to deliver directly into the lockers. That's really a key question to ask, and not just FedEx, UPS, Amazon, and any other carriers that you might have coming to your campus making direct deliveries to your customers. I'm ready for the next one, please. So then I guess right now Brenda's going to take it over, but I just wanted to pause for a moment, Jen and Brenda, if we have time, to ask any questions that you might have. You can put those questions in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer those questions. But thank you for joining us. Brenda, you're up next.
Have to unmute Brenda.
Yeah.
So yes, thank you, Peggy. Any questions that you may have, just put them in the chat and we will be able to answer any of those. So the next is the actual computer system that is in the intelligent locker. So there are many aspects of, is it a computer? Is it an iPad? Is it an Android device? Is it a Windows device? So there are many different ways of that kiosk and how the doors will open and how they access that. So if it goes down, how do you get to open all of your doors? I mean, the big key is if it goes down and you need to get into your locker system, that's one of the things that you really need to look at. Can you go on to the next slide, Joe? Because a lot of them have a key, and it's something that you turn, and sometimes it's, you know, per bank, or some have it where you have one key and you open it and then you can open up the doors. But if they're using a key, you know, just think about, okay, I got to make sure I'm keeping track of this key. So if you can have one without a key, sometimes that's better, because you know, if you go down, you want to immediately be able to get to your packages or, you know, whatever is put into the locker system, and not having a key is another big advantage. You want to go to the next slide? The next is the warranty. So again, there are many warranties, and it's always good to understand what it is, how long it is, and once that warranty is over, how and what happens with the service contract, or even during the warranty, you know, how is service done? And I'm going to ask Mark to go on with some additional questions. You want to do the next slide, Joe? And then Mark, do you want to continue for us?
Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'd be glad to. So when you're looking at your lockers and the service contract that you get with them, is it going to cover you for on-site service? Or is it something that they will cover for, but they will charge extra? So you got to make sure that you know that, because this could be a huge expenditure on the back end, maybe a year or two down the road. But make sure you're aware of what their costs are, if there are any costs for doing service contracts. And then, does the locker company expect you to do minor fixes? So things that potentially could go wrong is that maybe a door needs to be replaced, or a lock needs to be replaced for that door for various reasons. And are they going to expect you to do it, or are they going to send someone out? And again, if they send someone out, are they going to charge you? And or is it included in the maintenance contract? And if they do charge you, what is that charge? Is it a flat fee? Is it hourly? Do they charge you based upon mileage to get to your place? So those are all different things that you can that you need to consider when looking at that. Next slide, show. So what are their core values? Here at Brynka, this is an important thing for us. Core values are things that you really, really think are important for you. And is the company that's going to service you, is their core value that of service, or is it of making money for their stockholders or some other thing? The core values should, at least in some areas, match yours, either yours in the university or yours in the mail center itself. If you have a mission statement, does your mission statement line up with theirs? And if not, maybe that's not where you want to be, because they should really be having customer focus as one of their top 3 core values. So make sure that that's the case as well. Next slide, please. So, and is pricing all inclusive? When you get a proposal, you may find that that you're asking, well, does this include delivery? Does this include installation? Does this include training? Because it's not unusual for it to not include everything. Having run the print center at the university that I worked for, I found out the hard way that that not all contracts are created equal. And I went with a fairly reputable company, but their contract was a little bit different than the one that I had come out of. And I lost some features because of that. So make sure you know if that pricing is inclusive. And also, if you're looking at a lease, will that lease, at the end of the lease, will you own the lockers? Again, something that I learned is that with leasing, you don't always just own them, nor do you always just turn them back in. But if you want to purchase them, some leases will require that you pay a percentage of the value. And if that is the case, make sure you know what that percentage is, because there are leases available that have a $0 or a $1 buyout at the end. And that could make a huge, huge difference at the end of that lease. Next slide, please, Joe. And then, are there any issues with combining with things like meters or folder inserters, possibly a printer that you're going to be using for marketing mail? So what I found, again, with my own experience, is that I had a I had a 3-year lease on my meter, and I had a 3-year lease on my printer, but the printer wasn't very good, in my opinion, and needed to be replaced before that lease was done. When I tried to get out of the lease that combined the meter and the printer, it was just a struggle. Now, imagine adding a third device to that, such as lockers, and maybe because of the cost of the lockers, you stretch that lease out even further. Well, stretching that lease out to a 4, 5, or even 6-year lease, which brings the expenses down, the monthly expenses down to a very manageable amount, but it also requires then that your lease for your meter, or again, your folder inserter or other devices that you might have from that same company extend to that same period. And as we probably all know, meters, well, my experience is they typically don't last for 6 years before they really need a lot of service. Printers, especially if you're using them regularly, don't last that long. So can you get out of, or can you work around a long lease that might include lockers with your other mail equipment? All right. Next slide, I believe, goes to Brenda again.
Thank you, Mark. That was really good. And I know you've had a lot of experience with leasing, so it was nice hearing that experience.
Thank you.
So the next is, can you get into locker technology without doing extensive renovations to your school to save money? So there are many times when we start getting involved with it could be corporations, universities, and they start getting their architect and they start getting their construction involved, and they just, you know, it goes to a huge, huge capital expenditure. And what we have found is that if you try and do just a little bit in the very beginning, they will see the benefit and you'll be able to get that expenditure through later on. Because if they just look at this huge expense, not always, but a lot of times they will shut that budget down. So if you start small and just look at doing a few renovations rather than doing your whole mail center, then it may get approved faster. And the other thing is, if they are doing a whole new building, then try and get that capital expense, this expense, into that capital expenditure, and that will help out quite a bit as well. So I know many universities, when they start doing a whole new area that they want to put lockers in, add that to the capital expense, and it makes it much easier on the school as well. Next slide, Joe. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is, does the company that you are getting to provide the lockers have a long list of happy clients who have also bought lockers? So you don't want to be the first, you don't want to, you want to be to make sure that you have the references, that you've talked to them and you understand how they're going to work with you. So again, a lot of questions. We went through about 25 of them, but literally anytime you need any kind of information, Brynka has actually been doing this for, you know, I started 10 years in looking at them. Go ahead, Peggy.
Let me unmute myself. And a couple things came to mind as I was listening to these things. And again, as a user of lockers, in one where I've looked at quite a few of them out there in the different applications. You want to be able to have something that has other potential applications, such as, you know, will this software, am I able to do other things with this software manage receiving packages in. Maybe I don't have lockers. Maybe I want to be able to ship. Will I be able to do that? What other applications or modules does the business partner potentially provide for consideration? And the other thing is location. So at the university where I was, initially we wanted to put lockers in at least 2 different locations. So we started off slow, and you don't have to do all of this at once. We were able, our first location was an off-site location for students who were a couple miles from the campus. And they would have to come onto the campus. Maybe they were there for class, but a lot of times they're the seniors or the juniors who have jobs as well. And so we were able to service them, and it really hit off pretty well. And it's not just for packages and mail. Could your bookstore on your campus utilize them, where students are purchasing books, but they can't come during the hours that they are open? Can you work with that department, that area, to utilize the lockers for that option? As Brenda mentioned earlier on, you have the option of refrigerated. There's, consideration for your food services, even your library on campus, the loaner books and things that people need access to, but maybe can't get there during the hours that the service window is open. Those lockers are a perfect example of being able to utilize that for that purpose. And you can put lockers all in one location if you want, outside, inside. Put them in between, the dorms, key locations. And maybe certain dorms can consider a bank of lockers together. So those are things that you consider. They're not just, for one location. You can be very creative. And it will definitely take up a lot less space than what your traditional mailboxes do at universities. Over 5,000 students. So we had an individual mailbox, small 3x5 mailbox for folks, and you could only put mail in. But there's so much more that customers, particularly students, faculty, and staff need. And all the things that they are ordering these days. So I just wanted to be able to add that, and for those additional considerations.
Thanks, Peggy. I appreciate that. Yeah, we do have some are using it for keys because they can't get to wherever they're giving out the keys. So, and equipment rental. So there's a lot of whatever you're delivering. If you don't have the time to deliver, lockers are the solution for you. So thanks to everyone that has joined us. This will be available on our website that we are recording. So thank you very much. Next slide, Joe.
Yeah,
So
go
ahead, Jane. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending. If you enjoyed this webinar today, be sure to keep a lookout for our next webinar, which will be happening on September 22nd at 3 p.m. That's Thursday. Today you learned all about different great questions to ask when considering this type of technology of intelligent lockers. And next month, we're going to talk about how you can afford and make the pitch to your boss that this is an affordable solution for your department. So that'll be next month's Brynka Beacon. Also, if you enjoyed our speakers today, all 3 of them, Brenda, Peggy, and Mark, do offer free consultations. If you have any additional questions about lockers or you need some more information or resources, you can reach out to any one of them at info@brynka.com, or you can go to our website, brynka.com, and click on the consulting tab and actually choose a consultant to speak with. And again, that's all free of charge. So if you want to make use of that, they would be happy to talk to you and help you out in any way they can. So thank you to our speakers today, and we look forward to seeing you all hopefully at our next Brynka Beacon. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Let us know if you have any questions. Have a great day.